I'm Laura Reed, and today I'll be talking about communication climates and managing conflict. So pull up a chair, get comfy, take a bathroom break if you need to, and let's get into this. Communication climate refers to the relationship between people who are having a discussion. Our climate right now between you and me is probably pretty neutral. We've got some things in common, like we're all taking this course, but I've never personally met any of you, and you don't actually know who I am except for shared discussion topics. Most communication climates are going to start neutral unless you have a preconceived notion about someone, and they can absolutely be coming from different places. If you were suddenly put in a room with your favorite celebrity, for instance, your behavior would be super warm towards them, and theirs would probably be pretty neutral towards you. Everyone can learn to warm a communication climate, and some people are naturally skilled at it. There are three main kinds of positive communication messages. Recognition, which is a simple act of paying attention to someone while they're talking. Acknowledgement, which is actually responding in some manner to what they're saying. It could just be a nod, it could be a word or two, or maybe paraphrasing what they said. Endorsement is the warmest of the three communication messages, where you agree with them, support them, or otherwise encourage them in some manner. Maybe it's, yeah, you're right, but it could also be, I think this is how you could improve on that, make your position stronger. And now to the negative side. As usual, there are a lot more than 3 ways to cool off a climate with negative messages. They're broken up into 2 different groups, disconfirming messages and disagreeing messages. Disconfirming messages mostly show that you don't care a great deal about either the person or the message. You might be impervious to the fact that they're talking, or you interrupt them, or you think they're irrelevant. You could go off on a tangent, or you could distance yourself from the discussion in a really impersonal manner. Maybe your responses are really ambiguous or kind of incongruous with the whole discussion at all. A more aggressive type of this is the disagreeing message. You might be really aggressive in the way you respond, trying to intimidate the other person into backing down. You could complain about the content of their message, trying to make them give up and go away, or you could argue really hard against it. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't disagree with someone without taking the conversation climate down the negative path, though. It all comes down to how well you can listen to other people and how you respond to them. So, let's say someone says, I am so sick of having burgers for lunch. But you love burgers, or maybe they're the only thing you can eat, or something along those lines. You could reply saying, oh, well, that's too bad, that's what we're having. Or, well, I can't eat anything else. These are negative responses. Instead, you could acknowledge what they're saying and offer a way to make it work. Maybe try, I understand how eating the same thing can get boring. Why don't we try a different restaurant so you can order something different while I have my burger? Or straight out, yeah, you're right, let's have sushi today. Basically, just try and make an attempt to validate the other person's points. Generally, if someone brings something up in a conflict or a conversation, it's because they really want you to address that point, or at least they want you to hear it. Now, of course, it's all really well and good to say this or write it down. Actually doing it is a lot harder. Nobody likes being criticized, right? If they say they do, they're lying. They might be appreciative of the learning experience, but actually being criticized sucks. It's natural to get defensive, or at least I hope it is, because I sure get defensive, especially when I'm not expecting it or if I'm in a really bad mood to start with. I tend to be very cautious with what I say, mostly because I hate being wrong. So when someone does disagree with what I have to say, my knee-jerk reaction is that they're mistaken. That's not usually my outward reaction, though. I tend to default painfully towards the more deferential modes of communication. It's easier for me to be submissive than assertive, and it always has been. I'm learning to be better at this. I'm perfectly willing to debate with someone my own age or rank or position about, say, why vaccines are good and don't cause autism. I find conflict dreadfully uncomfortable, though, so I tend to only bother speaking up when I feel it's important. And that tendency towards giving in rather than trying to find a solution that works for both of us is a problem for me. It took me far longer than it should have to speak up against my old boss, for instance, and my avoidance of conflict ended up leading to my physical and emotional burnout. Learning better ways to interact in a conflict situation has been hugely important for me. I'm trying to get to the point where I can politely disagree with anyone I need to, including someone higher in power than myself. The funny thing is, if you asked me straight up whether my response to criticism changes depending on my perception of people, I'd have said no, of course not. I didn't even realize how much my perception of others came into play until I had to really think about it. The way people in a relationship deal with conflict absolutely changes the style of the relationship. I have relationships with friends that would completely end if I pushed certain conflicts, but since they're casual friends, we just don't talk about religion and science, and we just play games and have fun together. This means that we're casual friends. We're never going to be super close because we've never gotten to that point. For someone I am really close with, like my mother or my husband, I try to have a really open, calm, acknowledging sort of style with conflict. It's important to me that we still like each other, so I try to listen as clearly as I can, and work to find solutions we can both be happy with. My relationship with my former boss soured because of the way we handled conflicts. I tended to be really respectful and polite when I brought up we were working too many hours and I needed help. When nothing changed, rather than bringing it up again, I just let it go, right up until I was in enough pain and distress that I didn't have the patience to be calm and respectful anymore. I definitely tipped right over into being dismissive and aggressive, partially because he treated me differently because of how he perceived me. Where I saw someone with a decade of knowledge about my field, top of the industry skills, and the highest seniority in my shop, he saw a young, easily distressed girl who complained a lot. I don't know about you, but when I get upset, I start crying. Even if I'm really, really annoyed, it looks like I'm sad. We still interact now because I do still consult for my old job, but now that the power balance is a lot more equal, a lot of the tension has gone out of the relationship. So I guess what this boils down to is that the way you handle conflict is so important to your relationships, both personal and work. Being able to listen clearly to what the other person is saying and ensure they understand you as clearly is a vital skill that should probably be taught when we were a lot younger. Or maybe they did try to teach us, but we were all bratty, bored children and it went over our heads. Anyways, thanks for listening and good luck on your finals.